3 years ago, I was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. A dark, suicidal alter was born inside my mind. To take care of me, Helen quit her 6-figure job. David worked endless odd jobs after his regular shifts just to pay for my therapy. My 5-year-old sister, Lily, did everything she could to help around the house, always walking on eggshells around me. Today was Lily's 6th birthday. Helen came to my room early in the morning. "Lily has suffered so much because of you over the years," Helen said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Today is her birthday. Just be good, Maya. Don't make a scene." I nodded obediently. What Helen didn't know was that in order to celebrate Lily's birthday, I had been taking my medication on time for a whole week. But the moment Lily's birthday cake was placed on the table, a blinding pain split my skull. Eve, my alter, was trying to take control of my body. Trembling, I gently tugged at Helen's sleeve. Before I could say a word, Helen, who was usually so gentle, slapped me hard across the face and dragged me into the bathroom. "It's Lily's birthday. Can't you stop faking your episodes for just one day? If you're really in that much pain, then just go die already. You psycho. You're ruining this family." Helen screamed hysterically at me, slamming the bathroom door shut. Holding back my tears, I gave up. I stopped fighting Eve. I chose to set Helen, David, and Lily free, and I decided to let Eve have her wish. Eve took over my body. I became a helpless ghost, forced to watch her try to kill us over and over again. When I was 8, she took advantage of our parents being at the care facility looking after my sick grandmother. She climbed onto the balcony, ready to jump. Luckily, David came home early and caught her just in time. But David broke his leg in the struggle. It took him 3 months before he could walk again. Last winter, Eve found a piece of broken glass while Helen wasn't looking and slashed our wrist. Helen scrambled to get me to the ER. She stayed by my hospital bed for 3 days and 3 nights without closing her eyes. But Eve wouldn't stop. Not long after we got discharged, she filled the bathtub to the brim and pushed my head underwater. In the end, it was Lily who pulled my shoulder so hard she dislocated her own joint, barely dragging me out of the tub. Eve used my body to court death again and again. Helen and David dragged me back from the edge every single time. Every time I woke up, my family would break down in tears. "Maya, I'm begging you, please stop doing this. Are you trying to kill us all before you're satisfied? Maya, are you okay?" We were so scared. To keep them from hurting, I used to swallow handfuls of pills just to fight Eve for control. But this time, whatever. Eve looked at the eyebrow razor on the vanity, slipping it gently into her pocket. Instinctively, my consciousness screamed and struggled inside our mind. But then Helen's words echoed in my head. "If you're really in that much pain, then just go die already." I stopped fighting. Outside the door, David's confused voice drifted in. "Helen, where is Maya? Isn't she coming to eat cake with Lily?" Helen's voice cracked, filled with long-suppressed resentment. "She's in there, faking another episode. I tolerate her drama every other day, but today is Lily's birthday. She just has to ruin it. In all these years, Lily has never had a proper birthday party." David sighed, his voice dripping with pure exhaustion. "Let her cool down by herself. She needs to grow up. Let's just celebrate with Lily. She just wants to eat some cake. We can't let her down again." Eve laughed mockingly inside my head. "See, David and Helen don't love you. Why are you still holding on? They are miserable because of you. It's all your fault." I wanted to scream back at her. I wanted to say that they did love me. They gave up everything for me. But then I thought of the scar on David's shoulder, the dark circles under Helen's eyes, and Lily's desperate, people-pleasing smiles. Maybe Eve was right. I was the source of all their misery. To pay for my therapy, David worked multiple jobs. His back was so ruined he could barely stand, and on rainy days, the pain kept him bedridden. Helen had to run between the care facility for grandmother and home to watch me, sleeping barely 3 hours a night. Lily, at just 5 years old, did everything she could to please me, giving up her childhood just to keep the peace. If I died, maybe everyone would finally be happy. I stopped fighting. I watched as Eve turned on the faucet, stepping into the overflowing bathtub. Without a second of hesitation, she took the razor and sliced deep into our wrist. The water slowly bloomed into a deep, crimson red. My soul felt lighter, starting to float. This was good. It was finally over. David wouldn't have to spend his nights applying pain patches anymore. Helen wouldn't have to run herself into the ground trying to cure me. And Lily could finally have a normal, happy childhood. My family was finally free of their psycho daughter. Right before my consciousness fully faded, the control shifted back to me. Looking toward the bathroom door, I whispered my very last words. "David, Helen, Lily, I'm so sorry. If there is a next life, I promise I won't burden you again." When I opened my eyes again, I was floating right next to the dining table. David was gently covering Lily's eyes while Helen carefully brought out a fruit cake with lit candles. "Happy 6th birthday to our sweet Lily." Lily opened her eyes, a look of pure joy on her face. "Mom, Dad, I've never seen such a beautiful cake." My eyes welled with tears. When I first got sick, Lily was still a toddler. Because of me, she never had a real birthday. Every single year on her birthday, I would have a severe episode. Helen and David would have to rush me to the hospital, completely forgetting about her. This was literally the first time Lily had ever had a birthday cake. Helen turned her head to wipe away a tear, cutting a large slice for Lily. "Eat as much as you want, sweetheart." But Lily grabbed the plate and ran straight to the bathroom. She knocked softly on the door. "Maya, come out and eat cake. I saved you the sweetest piece." I wrapped my ghostly arms around her tiny body, wishing I could speak to her. "I'm sorry, Lily. I can't eat cake with you anymore. It's my fault. I ruined your birthday again." But my hands passed straight through her. I couldn't touch her. When no one answered, Lily lowered her head, walking back to the table deflated. "Mom, is Maya mad at me? She won't talk to me." Helen pulled Lily into a hug, her voice hardening with anger. "Ignore her. She's just playing victim. She threatens to kill herself every time, and we always save her. She's doing it for attention again. Today is your day, my princess. Let's not let her ruin it." As Helen spoke, she noticed the plate of food Lily had saved on the table for me. Frustrated, Helen swept the plate directly into the trash can. "If she wants to starve, let her. We don't owe her anything. I'm sick of her drama." I froze, tears pouring down my face. I'm not faking it. I was in so much pain every single day. Lily looked at the trash can, panicked, and tried to defend me. "Don't say that about Maya. She's just sick. She's really nice to me when she feels better." David patted Lily's back. "Lily, your sister is being selfish. She only thinks about her own pain. She never thinks about what this family goes through. Because of her, Helen and I are exhausted to the bone, and she still pulls these stunts." Floating in the air, I stared at David in disbelief. This was the dad who used to cherish me more than anything. It hadn't always been like this. Everything changed when I was 7. When I was 7, David and Helen left me at our neighbor's house for an afternoon. The neighbor, Mr. Henderson, locked me in his basement and abused me. That was the day Eve was born. Eve would replay that basement nightmare in our head, over and over, begging for death. Back then, David would kneel by my bed, crying, begging for my forgiveness, promising he would protect me forever. "But David, did you get tired too? I'm sorry. It really was all my fault." Even as a ghost, I felt a sharp, agonizing pain in my chest. Helen nudged David, her voice a mix of anger and grief. "How can you say that? Maya might be difficult, but we owe her this." Helen's eyes reddened. She was only 7 when that monster. If we hadn't left her there, she would be normal. She wouldn't be trying to end her life. "Today is Lily's birthday. Let's not fight. We'll have a serious talk with Maya tomorrow." Helen wiped her tears, gently stroking Lily's hair. "Lily, you didn't make a wish yet. Make a wish." Lily's face lit up. She closed her eyes tight and said with absolute sincerity, "I wish that David, Helen, Maya, and I can be together forever." Those words stabbed Helen right in the heart. Helen gasped, covering her mouth as she rushed into the bedroom. I could hear her muffled, agonizing sobs through the door. It was a cry of pure guilt, helplessness, and exhaustion. David's eyes turned red too. He silently placed a paper crown on Lily's head. "Dad promises you. We will be together forever." I wrapped my arms around David and Lily, whispering in the quiet room. "I'm sorry, Lily. Your wish will never come true. But without me, you and our parents will be so much happier. No more medical bills, no more constant fear, no more sleepless nights." After tucking Lily into bed, David stood outside the bathroom door, knocking gently. "Maya, come on out. It's cold in there. Let me make you some food. Don't you love my homemade steak? I'll make a huge plate just for you." Only dead silence answered him. "I'll never get to taste your steak again." Seeing no response, David walked back into the bedroom and whispered to Helen, "Why did you lock Maya in the bathroom for so long? Her mental state is unstable. Shouldn't we check on her?" Helen remained silent for a moment before shaking her head. "I didn't lock the door. She can walk out whenever she wants. There's only an eyebrow razor in there. She can't do any real damage with that. We've coddled her for years because of her illness. She can't keep acting out like this." My tears fell silently. I was trying to be a good girl. I wasn't trying to act out. David sighed heavily. He sat down with Helen to calculate this month's bills. My therapy was over $1,500, and grandmother's care facility fees were astronomical. Helen covered her face, letting out a low, broken sob. "David, when will this end? Maya can't even go to school. We're going to have to support her for the rest of our lives. I don't know if we can survive this." David squeezed Helen's hand, pulling her into his chest. "She's our daughter, Helen. Even if we go broke, we have to cure her. Once the construction project is done, I'll start driving Uber at night. We'll get through this." Looking at the silver hairs on David's head and Helen's tears, my heart shattered into a million pieces. They hadn't given up on me. They still loved me. But I realized it too late. That night, David and Helen slept right outside the bathroom door. Watching them, my soul was crushed under the weight of guilt. As the first light of dawn broke, soft noises came from the kitchen. With bloodshot eyes, Helen stood by the stove, making creamy mushroom soup. When I was little and got sick, she would always make this for me. But ever since my diagnosis, she hadn't made it once. She was cooking it so carefully, exactly the way I used to beg for it. It smells so good. I want to taste it so badly, but I can't. Helen carried the bowl to the bathroom door, her voice raspy. Maya, stop throwing a tantrum. I made your favorite mushroom soup. It's warm. Eat some, and then take your meds. I shouldn't have hit you yesterday. I shouldn't have said those things. Lily is waiting to play with you. Come out, okay? Let's fix this. Nothing but absolute silence came from inside. Helen's patience finally snapped. Her face hardened. Maya, don't do this. Do you think faking your death is going to make us feel sorry for you? Haven't we suffered enough for you? Still, there was no answer. Fuming, Helen slammed the bowl down on the floor, the soup splashing everywhere, and twisted the doorknob. Maya, did you actually die in there? The doorknob turned with a dull, heavy click. Helen shoved the white-painted door inward, her mouth already open, ready to unleash another wave of reprimands. Maya, get off the floor, Anne. The words did not merely stop. They seemed to dissolve into a choked, wet gasp. The steam from the hot water had long since condensed, coating the mint green tiles in a clammy, icy sweat. The room smelled sickeningly of copper, cheap, rose-scented bath soap, and the stagnant chill of open water. In the center of the bathroom, the porcelain tub was filled to the brim with dark, gelatinous crimson. Maya lay submerged up to her chin. Her head was tilted back against the rolled ceramic rim, her lips a faint, waxy violet, parted as if frozen mid-breath. Her right arm dangled over the side of the tub, her pale fingers hovering half an inch above the floor mat. Directly below her wrist, a pool of thick, dark blood had seeped into the grout, lines congealing into a mirror-like crust. The tiny eyebrow razor, its pink plastic handle stained with brown fingerprints, lay submerged at the bottom of the tub, glittering dully beneath the red surface. David. The sound that left Helen's throat was barely human, a low, strangled wheeze that sounded like air escaping a punctured tire. Her knees folded beneath her with a sickening thud. The bowl of mushroom soup slipped from her paralyzed grip, crashing against the doorframe. Creamy broth and ceramic shards exploded across the hallway, splashing over her bare feet. She did not flinch. She crawled forward on her hands and knees, dragging her palms through the hot soup and porcelain shrapnel. Her eyes wide, unblinking, locked on the tub. David, she screamed. It was not a call for help. It was the howl of an animal being torn apart from the inside out. David. David, come here. David. Heavy, frantic footsteps thudded down the hallway. David rushed to the doorway, still holding a clean dish towel, his brow furrowed in confusion. Helen, what happened? Did you drop the... David froze. The dish towel fell from his hand, fluttering down to land in the puddle of soup. For 3 whole seconds, the world inside the apartment lost all sound. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant rumble of morning traffic, the tick of the wall clock, everything vanished into a suffocating, ringing void. David's face drained of color so rapidly it looked as though his veins had been emptied by a siphon. No, he whispered. He didn't run. He stumbled, his bad leg giving out beneath him, crashing into the vanity counter, knocking over toothbrushes, combs, and hairpins. Scrambled into the tub, plunging both of his bare hands directly into the freezing, bloody water. Maya. Maya, baby, wake up. He grabbed her under her arms, hauling her upward. Water splashed over the side, soaking his shirt, his trousers, his face in thick, dark red. Maya's body was impossibly heavy, stiff, and freezing cold, the unnatural, rigid stiffness of someone whose heart had ceased beating 8 hours ago. Call 911, Helen. Call 911. David roared, his voice cracking into a ragged, bloody shriek. He dragged Maya out onto the tiled floor, laying her across the soaked bath mat. He dropped to his knees, locking his trembling hands together over her sternum, pumping down with violent, frantic force. 1, 2, 3, 4. With every compression, bloody foam bubbled from Maya's nose and parted lips. Breathe, damn it. Maya, breathe for daddy. Breathe. He pinched her nose, pressed his mouth over hers, and blew air into her cold lungs. The metallic taste of her blood filled his mouth. I floated right above them, looking down. My translucent hands hovered an inch above David's shaking shoulders. Dad, stop, I whispered, though no sound stirred the heavy air. Please stop. It doesn't hurt anymore. I don't feel it. Helen was on the floor beside them, clawing at her own hair, tearing chunks of brown strands from her scalp, screaming into the tile, her forehead slamming rhythmically against the bloody floorboards. I told her to die, Helen wailed, her fingernails scraping against the grout, until her cuticles tore and bled. I told her to go die. God, oh God, I killed my baby. I killed my daughter. Mommy, Daddy. A small, timid voice broke through the madness. Lily stood at the end of the hallway, wearing her oversized pink pajama shirt, with the cartoon rabbit on the chest. The paper crown from her birthday party was still perched crookedly upon her messy bedhead. In her small hands, she was clutching her favorite plush bear, the one whose ear Maya had sewn back on with yellow thread 2 months ago. Why is there strawberry syrup on the floor? Lily asked, taking 2 small steps forward, her bare toes stopping an inch from the puddle of spilled soup. David snapped his head around. His eyes were completely bloodshot, his face smeared with Maya's blood, looking like a demonic specter pulled straight from a nightmare. Lily, get out! David screamed, his voice unhinged, terrifying in its sheer desperation. Go back to your room. Close the door. Don't look. Don't look at her. Lily flinched, tears instantly flooding her wide, innocent eyes. She had never heard her father use that voice in her entire life. She looked past David's shoulder. She saw the pale, blue-gray legs lying limp on the white bath mat. She saw the gaping red gash along the wrist, looking like a second, hideous mouth. She saw her sister's half-open, vacant gray eyes staring at the ceiling, unblinking in the harsh fluorescent light. Lily's small mouth opened in a silent, petrified circle. The teddy bear slipped from her fingers, landing face down in the bloody broth. Maya? Lily whispered. Helen scrambled across the floor like a wounded beast, grabbing Lily by the waist and dragging the little girl backward into the children's bedroom, slamming the door shut with a concussive boom. Stay inside. Helen shrieked from the hallway, leaning her back against the door, sliding down until she was sitting in the pool of her own daughter's blood. Don't look, baby, don't look. Down in the courtyard, the sharp, wailing screech of sirens began to echo through the morning mist. Within 4 minutes, heavy combat boots pounded up the stairwell. 4 paramedics in navy blue uniforms burst through the front door with orange trauma kits and a defibrillator. Where is she? The lead medic shouted. David was still on his knees, his hands moving up and down in a mechanical, frantic rhythm over Maya's sunken chest, his own tears dripping onto her cold cheeks. She's cold. She's just cold, David sobbed, his voice reduced to a broken, childlike whimper. Help me warm her up. Please just warm her up. She always gets cold on rainy days. The lead medic dropped to his knees, his fingers pressing firmly into Maya's carotid artery. He didn't reach for the defibrillator. He didn't pull out the intubation tube. He looked at the deep pooling of livor mortis along her back and thighs, the pale, fixed pupils, and the stiff, unyielding joints of her fingers. He gently, firmly placed a gloved hand over David's wrists, forcing him to stop compressing. Sir, the medic said softly, his voice heavy with crushing finality. Stop. Please stop. No. Use the shocks. Use the goddamn paddles. David roared, trying to shove the paramedic away with his shoulder. She's only 16. She's just a kid. Sir, she has rigor mortis, the medic said, holding David's shoulders with iron grip. Her heart stopped at least 6 to 8 hours ago. There's nothing we can do. She's gone. The word gone hung in the steam of the small bathroom like a toxic cloud. David's arms went completely limp. He fell forward, his forehead resting against the icy curve of Maya's dead shoulder. His hands, still stained with her dried blood, curled weakly around her cold, wet ankles. He didn't scream anymore. He let out a dry, rattling moan from the very bottom of his soul, the sound of a man watching his entire universe collapse into a handful of gray ash. 2 police officers stepped into the room, their radios crackling with static. Officer down at scene. Cancel code 3 transport. Request coroner and detective unit for an unattended juvenile death. Helen lay in the hallway, curled into a fetal position, her forehead pressed against the blood-soaked carpet. I locked the door, she whispered to the empty air, her eyes vacant, staring at the ceiling. I told her she was faking it. I made soup. I made her favorite soup. An officer knelt beside Helen, trying to wrap a shock blanket around her shivering shoulders. Ma'am, can you hear me? We need you to step into the living room. Helen didn't move. She didn't blink. Floating above the narrow hallway, I lowered myself until my spiritual form was hovering inches above her ear. Mom, I breathed, my tears falling through her cheek without leaving a trace. Don't cry. You're free now. You don't have to work 3 shifts anymore. You don't have to run between the care home and my hospital bed. It's okay. I'm not in pain anymore. A shadow moved beside me. I turned around. Standing at the edge of the hallway, bathed in a soft, dim gray light, was Eve. She was wearing the exact same clothes I died in, the faded yellow sweater and the torn jeans. But her face was different. The cold, mocking smirk that had haunted my nightmares for 3 years was gone. Her eyes were clear, ancient, and filled with an exhaustion so profound it seemed to pull the light from the room. You shouldn't have let me do it, Eve said softly, her voice echoing only inside my ethereal consciousness. You wanted this, I replied, looking at her scarred wrists. You tried to jump off the balcony when we were 8. You tried to drown us in the tub. You told me every single day that dying was the only way out. Eve looked toward the bathroom door, where the detectives were unfolding a black vinyl body bag. I was born in that basement, Maya, Eve whispered, her shoulders trembling. When Mr. Henderson locked the iron door when he turned off the light, you were too small to hold that much terror. Your mind was going to shatter into dust. So I took the key. I took the screams. I took the dark. I took the filthy hands, and I locked them inside my chest so you could go back to school and smile at your parents. She walked toward me, her translucent fingers gently touching the side of my face. I didn't want you to die, Maya, Eve wept, her tears glowing like pale embers. I wanted the basement to stop hurting. I thought if we went to sleep, the dark would finally let us go. I looked at the altar I had feared for 3 long years. She wasn't a monster. She was just a 7-year-old girl who had been asked to carry a mountain on her broken back, until she finally collapsed beneath the weight. I reached out and wrapped my arms around Eve. For the first time in our existence, we didn't fight for control. We held each other in the quiet space between life and death, watching our mortal wreckage being zipped into black canvas. By noon, the apartment had been taped off with yellow plastic barriers. The coroner's van had driven away, carrying the physical shell of Maya Vance to the county morgue. Inside the living room, the silence was suffocating. The police had left after taking David's formal statement. Detective Miller, veteran investigator with graying hair, had spent an hour interviewing David and Helen. When he realized that the girl had a documented 3-year history of severe dissociative identity disorder, combined with chronic childhood trauma from a known neighborhood sex offender, his sharp questions softened into heavy, uncomfortable sympathy. There will be a mandatory inquest, Detective Miller had said quietly, placing his notebook back into his breast pocket. Given the medical logs and the psychiatric history, it will be ruled a non-suspicious self-inflicted fatality. But, Mr. Vance, you should find a family counselor for your youngest daughter. Now David sat on the edge of the sofa, his elbows resting on his knees, his face buried in his blood-crusted hands. Helen was sitting on the floor by the radiator, staring at the empty bathroom door. In the small bedroom, Lily sat on her bed, her knees pulled tight against her chest. She hadn't made a sound for 5 hours. She had simply taken her paper crown off and laid it neatly in the center of her pillow. David slowly lifted his head. His gaze drifted across the messy living room, landing on Maya's small wooden desk in the corner. The desk was tidy. On the left side sat her medication organizers, 7 small plastic boxes, labeled Monday through Sunday. Every single compartment was empty. She had taken every dose on time, with water, exactly as the psychiatrist had ordered, for the entire week leading up to Lily's birthday. David stood up, his joints popping with a dry, painful crack. He walked over to the desk with slow, mechanical steps. Beneath the pill organizer lay a thick, spiral-bound sketchbook. David reached out with a trembling hand, flipping the cardboard cover open. On the first page, written in Maya's round, neat handwriting, was a title: Lily's 6th birthday, the big sister's promise. David's breath hitched. He turned the page. It was not a suicide note. It was an illustrated, handmade picture book. Maya had drawn dozens of watercolor scenes. Lily taking her first steps in the park. Lily holding an ice cream cone with chocolate smeared across her chin. Lily wearing a cape made of a bath towel, pretending to be a superhero. On page 10, Maya had drawn a little girl holding the hand of a tall, beautiful girl with butterfly wings. Beneath the drawing was a short paragraph. Dear Lily, happy 6th birthday. I know big sister is scary sometimes. I know that when the bad monster inside my head wakes up, mommy and daddy have to scream, and the house gets very cold. I'm so sorry you had to learn how to be quiet before you learned how to sing. I saved my allowance for 5 months. Inside the secret pocket of my blue backpack, there is an envelope with $60. It's for you to buy that pink bicycle with the training wheels in the shop window. I promise I will take all my bitter medicine today, so I won't have a bad dream during your party. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your big sister, Maya. Crack. A sound tore from David's chest, a dry, splintering gasp that sounded like ribs snapping under a hydraulic press. He clutched the sketchbook against his chest, dropping straight onto his knees. On the wooden floorboards, his shoulders convulsing in violent, uncontrollable spasms. Helen. David choked out, holding the book out toward his wife with shaking hands. Look at this. Helen, look at what she made. Helen slowly turned her head. Her eyes, dull and glassy like unpolished marbles, focused on the bright watercolor butterflies on the page. She crawled across the floor, her trembling fingers touching the dried paint. She saved her allowance. Helen whispered, her voice rising in a terrifying, hysterical pitch. She took her medicine. She was trying to be good. Then, Helen remembered the hallway. She remembered the sound of her own hand striking Maya's cheek. Can't you stop faking your episodes for just one day? If you're really in that much pain, then just go die already. You psycho. You're ruining this family. No. Helen screamed, grabbing her throat with both hands, digging her nails into her own flesh until bright red crescents bloomed along her collarbones. No. 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 She threw herself against the base of the sofa, banging her head against the wooden frame. She was trying to stay. She was holding onto my sleeve. She asked me for help, and I hit her. I told her to die. I sent her into that room to die. David scrambled over, wrapping his arms around Helen from behind, pinning her wrists to prevent her from gouging her own eyes out. Helen, stop. Stop, please. David wept, his own tears soaking the back of her neck. Kill me, David. Helen shrieked, thrashing against his grip with terrifying strength. Take the razor and kill me. I don't deserve to breathe. My baby asked me for an umbrella, and I threw her into the freezing river. Kill me. In the doorway of the small bedroom, Lily stood watching. She walked out slowly, her small feet silent on the floorboards. She picked up Maya's blue backpack from the coat rack, unzipped the front pocket, and pulled out a small, white paper envelope. Written on the front in purple crayon was for Lily's pink bike. Inside were 3 crisp $20 bills, folded neatly into small squares, alongside a small, hand-drawn paper butterfly. Lily held the envelope against her chest. She didn't cry. She simply walked over to the bathroom door, sat down on the cold floor where the pool of blood had been scrubbed clean, and began softly singing the birthday song Maya had taught her 3 years ago. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Her tiny, sweet voice drifted through the ruined apartment, carrying an agony so pure that both David and Helen stopped screaming, collapsing together in the dirt, weeping in absolute, irreversible ruin. The funeral was held on a gray, overcast Tuesday at the municipal cemetery on the southern edge of the city. There were no crowds, no flowers from distant relatives who had long since stopped calling because they were uncomfortable with Maya's diagnosis. Only David, Helen, Lily, and Dr. Robert Thorne, the clinical psychologist who had treated Maya for the past 2 years. The small white casket sat above the open grave, surrounded by a single wreath of white lilies and a small pink bicycle with training wheels, which David had purchased with the money from the envelope. Dr. Thorne stood beside David, his hands clasped behind his dark coat, staring at the polished brass nameplate. Maya Elizabeth Vance, July 14, 2008 to October 12, 2024. The storm is over, little bird. Fly home. She was making progress, David. Dr. Thorne said softly, his voice thick with suppressed grief. In our session last Thursday, Eve spoke to me for 40 minutes. Do you know what Eve told me? David looked up through swollen, bloodshot eyes. His face was gaunt, his beard patchy and gray. What did she say? Eve told me she was tired of being the guard dog, Dr. Thorne murmured, adjusting his glasses. She said, Maya loves her family so much that it hurts her to breathe. If I can learn to trust her parents, maybe I don't have to carry the razor anymore. Dr. Thorne paused, wiping a tear from the corner of his eye. Eve wasn't trying to destroy your family, David. Eve was the scar tissue from 7 years old. When a wound is that deep, the body builds a thick, ugly callus to keep the bone from breaking. You don't cut a callus away with anger. You soften it with time. David closed his eyes. A single drop of cold rain hit his temple, tracking down his cheek like a freezing blade. He remembered the day he found out about Mr. Henderson 9 years ago. He remembered the fury, the police cars, the courtroom where the old man was sentenced to 25 years. He had thought that justice in a courtroom was the end of the story. He had thought that working 3 jobs to pay for private clinics was the definition of fatherhood. He had spent 9 years paying the bills, but he had stopped listening to the child. Whenever Maya broke down, he saw the bill from the hospital. Whenever Maya screamed, he saw the hours of overtime he had to work tomorrow. He had turned his daughter's agony into a ledger of financial debt, and in doing so he had made her feel like a criminal whose very existence was bankrupting the people she loved. After the burial, the rain began to fall in heavy rhythmic sheets. Helen refused to leave the graveside. She sat on the wet grass, her black coat soaked through, her hands pressed flat against the mound of fresh earth. Helen, come on, David whispered, his voice cracked with exhaustion, holding an umbrella over her head. Lily is getting cold. We have to go home. Home? Helen let out a dry, hollow laugh that had no humor in it. What home, David? The bathroom with the bleach floor? The kitchen where I made soup. She'll never eat. She looked up at him, her face soaked in rain and tears. Every corner of that apartment is a crime scene. Every wall is covered in her blood. I can't go back there. David stood in the pouring rain, looking down at his broken wife and his silent, hollow-eyed 6-year-old daughter. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small set of keys. We aren't going back, David said. Helen blinked. What? I signed the termination lease this morning, David said, his voice completely flat, devoid of emotion. I sold the car. I paid off the remaining arrears at the clinic. He looked toward the misty gray horizon where the highway stretched out toward the northern mountains. We're moving to the coast, near your sister's town. We're going to start over. For Lily. You think moving will wash this away? Helen whispered, pressing her fingers deeper into the wet mud of the grave. You think 300 miles will stop? Her voice from screaming in my head every time I close my eyes? No, David said, kneeling beside her in the mud, pulling both Helen and Lily into his soaked coat. It will never stop screaming. We will carry this stone on our backs until the day we join her in this dirt. He kissed the top of Helen's wet head. But we owe her one thing, Helen. We owe Maya the promise that Lily will not grow up in the dark. 3 months passed. The small coastal town of Astoria was cold, damp, and smelled perpetually of sea, salt, cedar smoke, and diesel from the fishing trawlers. David had taken a job as a night maintenance mechanic at the local boat repair yard. The work was hard, his bad leg ached constantly in the maritime fog, but the physical labor kept his mind from collapsing into the abyss during the midnight hours. Helen had not returned to corporate finance. She worked 4 mornings a week at the community library, shelving children's books in absolute silence. In the afternoons, she attended an intensive trauma bereavement group for parents who had lost children to suicide. Their rented cottage sat on a low bluff overlooking the gray waters of the Pacific. In the living room, there were no mirrors in the hallways. On the mantelpiece above the wood stove sat a single, framed photograph, Maya at age 6, holding a yellow dandelion up to the camera, her face completely bright, untainted by the shadow that would consume her a year later. Beside the frame sat the small wooden box containing her ashes, wrapped in a soft silk scarf. One Saturday morning, Lily sat at the low wooden coffee table, surrounded by colored markers and sheets of heavy drawing paper. Helen walked out of the kitchen, carrying 2 mugs of warm apple cider, and set one beside Lily. What are you drawing, sweetie? Helen asked softly, kneeling beside the table. Lily didn't hide the paper. She had drawn a house by the sea, with smoke curling from the stone chimney. On the roof sat 2 birds, one large and blue, with silver wings, and one small and yellow. Beneath the drawing, written in careful block letters, was, Maya and Eve are watching the boats. Helen's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in 3 months, she didn't scream. She didn't break down into violent hysterics. She simply reached out, her trembling fingers gently stroking the edges of the drawing, a single, warm tear tracking down her cheek, falling onto the paper, like a drop of morning dew. Yes, baby, Helen whispered, pulling Lily close against her chest. They are watching the boats. And they are warm now. From the open window overlooking the bay, the sea breeze swept through the room, rustling the lace curtains. I stood on the wooden deck outside, feeling the cool salt air pass through my fingers. Beside me, Eve leaned against the railing, watching the white seagulls dip and soar over the gray waves. Her hair was neat, her face peaceful, the dark shadows beneath her eyes completely gone. They're going to be okay, Eve murmured, looking through the glass at Lily, sipping her warm cider. Yes, I replied, leaning my head against her shoulder. They're learning how to remember us without bleeding. Eve turned her head, looking at me with a soft, rare smile, the smile of a sister who had finally finished her long, terrifying shift in the dark. Are you ready to go, Maya? I looked back into the warm, cedar-scented living room one last time. I saw my father coming through the front door in his heavy wool coat, setting down a bag of fresh groceries, walking over to kiss Lily's forehead. I saw my mother placing her hand over David's, their fingers interlocking, bearing the weight of their shared, permanent scar together. I felt no pain. I felt no lingering cold. Only a vast, radiant lightness that began at the center of my chest, spreading outward like golden sunlight breaking through morning fog. I'm ready, I whispered. Eve reached out, taking my translucent hand into hers. Together, our forms dissolved into thousands of tiny shimmering points of silver light, rising into the coastal breeze, soaring past the cedar trees, past the gray cliffs, ascending into the infinite, untamed blue of the open sky. Behind us, on the mantelpiece beside the warm wood stove, the yellow dandelion in the photograph seemed to catch the morning sun, glowing bright, beautiful, and forever free.